Hey, welcome back to Business 101, Introduction to Business. And as we continue our tour through the content on marketing, we now get to our discussion of market research. Why do we talk about market research? Well, because remember when we talked about how to best lead, that you would have to understand first your people and what motivates them? Well, the same is true about how to target and form messaging to reach potential buyers. The better that you understand them, the better you're able to shape your marketing for them. And indeed, as we look here at the textbook definition of marketing research, the study of what customers need and want and how best to meet those needs and wants. Unless you really research the people that you will be served by your product or service, well, how do you really know that you're meeting their needs? And that's the spirit of our discussion on marketing research. You can see here as we take a quick look at figure 11.3 from the textbook, this is at least a visual way of understanding where marketing research really falls in the great discussion on how to do marketing on behalf of the business. You see how it sits at the very middle, the central pivot of understanding users and customers to assess their needs, to help make decisions, to combine that with the environmental factors that we talked about in a previous lecture. All of these kinds of things shaped upon really the acid test of who are your potential users. The research process that is typically used, as you can see outlined here, in 5 steps. You begin by studying the current situation and then selecting a research method, which is what we'll talk about at length in this particular lecture. After selecting the research method from several different options, you'll collect the data, analyze the data, and prepare an analysis report, what you have possibly learned from the data you've collected. Let's talk about the types of data that you're trying to collect. You can see here there are really 2 types of data we talk about when we do marketing research. There is secondary data. It's defined as data that are already available from previous research, published in all sorts of different formats. And then there is primary data, new data that are collected from newly performed research. Both of these can be useful, many times useful in different ways. Of course, the real trick with secondary data is knowing the validity of the source you're getting it from. Is it true and objective? How is that data generated? And then, of course, with primary data, are you really using as close as you can to a scientific method to collect your primary data so that it's pure and objective? So from here we talk about different research methods that might be used if you're looking to collect primary data. There is, of course, observation, obtaining data by watching and recording consumer behavior. This can be extremely useful as long as you make sure you're collecting data from the right type of consumer and from a sufficient number of observations in order to collate sufficient data. A second research method is the time-tested survey, collecting consumer data using questionnaires, telephone calls, and face-to-face interviews. Of course, many times the results and the purity of the data you collect from a survey is really in the art of how you frame the questions to begin with, to make sure that the questions themselves aren't skewing or preloading the types of responses that consumers may give. Another research method would be the use of the focus group, using a group of people from a larger population who are asked their attitudes, opinions, beliefs about a product in an open discussion. One focus group type of research that I encountered was someone who was running, based on the East Coast, a research group targeting working mothers. And so what she found through a variety of focus groups that she used across the United States was some fascinating data about the typical plight of working mothers, including that hour of existential angst that apparently the great majority of working mothers all experience every single day of their work life. Can you guess what that 1 hour of angst is? Well, that hour of angst for most working mothers is the hour before they need to decide what they're going to serve their family for dinner, right around 6 o'clock or so, because they realize that more times out of not, they've run through their entire workday and really don't have a plan for what they're going to serve their family for dinner, and that brings up all sorts of angst and anxiety and doubt about, well, what kind of a wife, what kind of a mother am I if I'm not really sure what I'm serving my family for dinner this evening? All of this found primarily through focus group research. The second type of research you see on the slide, experimentation, using a sample of potential customers to obtain reactions to test versions of new products or variations of existing products. Experimentation is a research method that is used quite frequently as a contemporary best practice for startups, especially high-tech startups, because it can be incredibly time-consuming and expensive to build an entire product. Rather, what we do at the very beginning, as we begin to make contact with potential consumers, is we test very low fidelity, small versions of the actual product we're thinking of, just to get the reaction of consumers to key functions, key benefits, before we build out the full version with all its functionality. This then, a collection of research methods that are used in marketing research. This really is an incredibly important part of the marketing puzzle, the marketing process, especially for new products and new ventures. Hope that helps. We'll see you in the next lecture.